After the Civil War, Atlanta's rapid growth spurred a high demand for plumbing and pipe fitting services, leading to the formation of contracting firms and union activities. Initially, Atlanta's plumbers and pipe fitters were part of the National Association of Plumbers, Steam Fitters, and Gas Fitters under the Knights of Labor. However, dissatisfaction with the Knights led them to join the United Association, UA, in 1889. In 1891, Atlanta's unionized plumbers and pipe fitters were granted a charter as UA Local Union 72. Early on, Local 72 had 42 members and was active in strikes for better wages and hours. Under the leadership of Clarence O. Langston, the local helped pass a city ordinance requiring all plumbers and pipe fitters to pass a competency exam. The union grew rapidly, and by 1894 it was thriving with nearly all local tradesmen as members. By 1914, under John M. Ryan's leadership, Local 72 had grown to 80 members and maintained strict standards for admission, fostering a cooperative relationship with employers. "It is gratifying to see the progress we've made in Atlanta," Brother Ryan said. "We are absolutely refusing to take anyone into the local unless they can qualify before our examining board. This course is meeting with approval of the employers, and there is already a get-together spirit prevailing." 1920s to 1950s. 1922 saw Local 72 have full employment, but the local did not have written agreement with most of its contractors. Local 72 was grappling with a growing anti-union, pro-open shop spirit among employers. After the great stock market crash of 1929 brought on the Great Depression, UA members, along with the rest of the country, fell on hard times. Construction all but stopped, chronicled the UA history journals. The economies of both the US and Canada spiraled ever downward until unemployment reached extremely high numbers, and workers began to give up altogether. According to the 1930 census, only 48% of the city's workforce was gainfully employed at the time. These were lean times for the UA, and no UA conventions were held from 1928 to 1938. FDR's New Deal legislation put many UA members back to work in the early 30s, building schools, public buildings, and housing projects. But it wasn't until the U.S. entered World War II that Georgia finally shed the lingering effects from the Great Depression. By the time the war ended in 1945, UA 72 had grown to over 300 members and were working on iconic projects such as the Ford plant in Hapeville and the GM plant in Doraville. At the time, most Local 72 journeymen were making a $2 per hour scale, with wages rising 20% to $2.50 by 1948, and eventually $2.75 by 1951. 1950s to 1970s. By 53, under a new agreement, the wage scale had increased to $2.90 and $5.80 for overtime, while employers contributed 7.5 cents per hour to Local 72's new health and welfare fund. By 1956, Local 72 negotiated a 25-cent contribution to a new piping industry program that provided funds for the welfare fund, the pension fund, and the education fund for training 72 members. Work was steady, sustained by landmark projects like the Yates Power Plant in Noonan. In 1961, Local 72 leadership called upon the NLRB to take action against the Associated General Contractors for a lockout that suspended opportunity for hundreds of Local 72 members. The late 1960s saw the purchase of a new office building located at 374 Maynard Terrace, where the local still resides today. During that same year, Local 72 negotiated a new contract with the newly formed Association of Mechanical Contractor, with a wage rate of $5.85 per hour in the first year, rising to $6.25 per hour in year two. The 1960s and 70s were marked by significant social and political change in the United States, and Atlanta was at the heart of the civil rights movement. Local 72, like many organizations in the South, had to navigate the challenges of this era. The union took steps to ensure that it was inclusive and representative of the diverse workforce in Atlanta. This included efforts to recruit and train African American and minority workers who had historically been excluded from many trade unions. The mid-60s saw the birth of Atlanta's professional sports team with the new Atlanta Falcons of the NFL and the relocated Braves from Milwaukee, both in 1966, and the building of the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium followed closely in 1968 with the NBA's Atlanta Hawks. Local 72 members played a vital role in Atlanta's growth in the 60s and 70s, prompting the UA Journal to report the local helped transform the city into a transportation hub, a medical and education center, the financial capital for a large section of the country, and the leader in culture, sports, recreation, and national defense. 1975 brought the advent of MARTA, and UA 72 members, led by business agent Tom Payne, carried the fight for fair wages to build the rail system all the way to City Hall, with Mayor Maynard Jackson ultimately siding with labor and invoking the Finley Ordinance, the city's version of Davis-Bacon Prevailing Wage Act. In 1979, members ratified a new contract with a wage rate of $12.95 per hour. By the end of the 70s, Atlanta had grown to nearly 3 million people, had operational hubs of 400 of the largest 500 industrial corporations in the country, and was home to the only federal agency outside of Washington, D.C., then called the National Center for Communicable Diseases, now the CDC. 1980s and 90s. By 1980, Local 72 members were performing maintenance and service at Ford, General Motors, Lockheed, Georgia Power, as well as banks, insurance companies, and many other businesses. And by 1983, the local saw a significant increase in wages to $18.19 per hour for Journeyman. In 1989, UA members, along with 2,000 members from other crafts, marched on the Capitol to protest the new Georgia Dome being built by non-union. The efforts paid off, and the facility was ultimately built with union labor. Throughout the 80s and 90s, UA 72 members helped build some of the most iconic buildings in the city, including the King and Queen buildings on 400, Centennial Olympic Stadium for the 1996 Olympic Games, the subsequent retrofitting to Turner Field, and the new home for the Atlanta Hawks and Atlanta Dream, the Phillips Arena in 1999.
Everything was booming. It was thriving. It was feast or famine, it seemed like. And we were feasting. We had work all over town. World Congress Center.
The Martin Luther King Middle School up here off of Hill Street, it's still there. And
we've been down at the Georgia Dome, Coca-Cola, Underground, basically New Dome, Old Dome, Braves Stadium, Capitol downtown. Basically a lot of facilities that were downtown.
Mercedes-Benz. I worked out at Mercedes-Benz when it was being built. Choa Hospital. Yep. Piedmont expansion.
Basically everything in Atlanta we had hands in or hands on, you know what I'm saying? At some sort.
The 2000s to today. The last 2+ decades have seen UA 72 grow to over 3,500 members who've helped construct the renowned facilities that draw millions of people to Atlanta, including the World of Coca-Cola, the Georgia Aquarium, Wellstar Health Systems, Emory University Hospital, Porsche North America, Mercedes-Benz North American Headquarters, multiple data centers, Truist Park, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and multiple renovations to the world's busiest airport, Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport.
When we drive through downtown, we always say to our kids, I've done that building, I've been in that building, I've done that powerhouse, I've done that, so it's the pride thing to say that we have done it and we put our hands on it. I've been to Atlantic Station, I've done it, I was there when it was being built, so that's the pride in what we do, is that we can go back to our kids and our grandkids and say, the grandpa worked on that,
Business manager Terry Newsom Jr. and your current administrator administration know that while we have a rich history of building the things that make Atlanta home for over 6 million people, our best days are ahead of us.
Future looks bright because of the number of projects we have. We have the best training around. Just yesterday, I was at UA headquarters, and our general president made the comment. It's always been said that 72 is a big player in the Southeast. He changed it up. He's talking about the east side of the country. We are a big player on the whole east side, not just the Southeast no more. So a lot of locals, even locals that we probably don't ever talk to, they look at us. Look at 72.
Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your service to our industry, to this community, to this local union, and to each other.